All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Josh Green, and I'm the director of ICAP, the Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program, which is run out of the Virginia SBDC and George Mason University. We're very fortunate to receive funding from our partners like those at VIPC, the SBA, the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative, Prince William County, as well as the National Science Foundation. We are here to provide assistance to early stage tech and innovation driven startups. And we are partnered with many of the groups, actually all of the groups that are on the call today. So we're excited to be talking about tech transfer and the programs and resources that are out there. For now, before I get into too much detail, I will pass it over to my partner for today, Sean Mallon from VIPC.
Thanks, Josh. Awesome. And thank you to the panelists who we'll be hearing from in a few minutes, and to all of those who are listening to this live, as well as those who will hopefully enjoy hearing it in the future in a recorded version. Josh gets to play a slightly different version today that he has played in the last two sessions, where he is both a host and a panelist. So he will be wearing a panelist hat as we move on. So my name is Sean Mallon. I am the VP for Commercialization at the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. We are Virginia's state-affiliated and state-funded investment organization, funding organization, and we support both private sector technology-driven startups as well as university faculty members within Virginia's universities and colleges that are pursuing research that could lead to translation and commercialization and ultimately commercial product that could be sold in the market. So that's me, and in just a minute I'm going to ask to go down the line with introductions, but just a couple words to orient everybody. So this is the third of three sessions that we're going to do. The first one was a couple of weeks ago. And it really focused on what is technology transfer. We're hoping that our audiences will be not exclusively, but in many senses primarily university affiliated researchers, faculty members, graduate students, PhDs, postdocs, and others who are not as familiar with commercialization as they would like to be, so are listening in on these to learn more. So the first one was, what is technology transfer, and why would you engage with a technology transfer office? If you've missed that, and those are questions that you have, I encourage you to go back and take a look at that session. It was very informative. The one we did, session 2, that we did a week ago, was focused on commercialization pathways. So the idea here was to outline some of, but certainly not the entirety of, the options that are available to faculty members, researchers, postdocs, graduate students, as they consider biting off kind of an entrepreneurial pathway, whether they do it with both feet going into the water or whether they have an affiliation. Again, if that's an area that you don't know much about or would like to learn more about, I encourage you to go back and spend some time listening to session 2. For this week, what we're going to do is we're going to dig into funding programs as well as training programs. So basically cost-free training as well as early stage non-dilutive grant funding. We can get into kind of dilutive equity funding perhaps a little bit later on, but primarily we want to talk about grant funding in education and cost-free counseling. So with that, what I'd like to do is just go down the line, starting with Mark Mondry from Virginia Tech to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, and thanks you for the invitation to participate in the panel. My name is Mark Mondry, and I serve as the Director of Launch, the Center for New Ventures here at Virginia Tech.
Okay, Roberto.
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you again for joining us. My name's Roberto Melendez, and I work alongside Mark Mondry. I'm the Associate Director at Launch, also at Virginia Tech.
Excellent. Let's go to Giselle.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Giselle Stoltz, Senior Director of Entrepreneurship Programs at George Mason University and the Director of the ICAP program at Mason.
Thank you, Giselle. And Rob.
Hi, Rob Brook, colleague of Sean. Actually, I'm on the grants team that Sean runs. But my particular role on the team is to help be the statewide coordinator and supporter extraordinaire of sorts of the SBIR program and the STTR program. We actually have a grant, a cooperative agreement from the SBA as well to help beef up some of the efforts that we do, and happy to do it. So we'll talk more about what I do and how we do that, a little bit at SBIR in a moment.
And thank you, Rob. And Josh, you introduced yourself at the top of the hour. Was there any part of your introduction that you missed?
No, I feel well introduced. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Anyway, great to have all of you here as panelists. What we're going to do first is we're going to kind of go through the panelists and talk about different cost-free entrepreneurial support resources that are available, primarily, again, to academics and academic researchers and inventors. And we're going to start with Mark, and his topic is services and support resources available typically through a tech transfer organization as represented by, in this case, Mark and the launch program at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think in the last two sessions, I'm assuming that you've had the opportunity to look at the last two sessions. We talked a lot about the mechanisms behind technology transfer and the philosophy behind building organizations and structures to support those mechanisms. What we're really talking about today is a little bit more about some of the other support that exists. And I'd like to kind of refer to it as the mechanisms and the resources that are there to inspire people, inspire our research community to think entrepreneurially. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we only support technology startups. We're supporting more of an entrepreneurial thinking, helping people equip themselves perhaps with the lexicon and some methodologies around what does it take to translate an early stage technology to a commercially viable product or service? And more importantly, can we inspire you to participate in the creation of a spin out from the university that's seeking to commercialize an early stage technology? So here at Virginia Tech, we a couple of years ago, we developed something called the Startup Labs. I think most universities have something that is similar. And this is a series of 7 workshops. We actually chose to put it within the platform of professional development for our research community. So in addition to getting some content and some dialogue and some active learning in these workshops around kind of entrepreneurial thinking, they also get professional development credits, which is important for a lot of different mechanisms within their departments and their colleges. Startup Labs exist to try to demystify this notion of entrepreneurship. We did a survey a couple of years ago, and we found that a lot of our researchers who have not gone down the entrepreneurial path they thought that the mechanisms and the ecosystems were rather noisy, that entrepreneurship was used in a lot of different ways. It was confusing as to which resources would be valuable to them, et cetera, et cetera. So Startup Labs exist to help demystify it. It includes topics like strategic teams, formation of a startup, funding of a startup, pitching of a startup, things like branding and IP management, storytelling and how that fits in. So a lot of the different kind of mechanisms that we're just asking people to contemplate, we're really putting questions on the table, not answers, but asking them to contemplate and engage with a dialogue with us as they look down this entrepreneurial journey. We also include some other kind of events that help inspire and celebrate innovation. We have an annual event that is campus-wide, and we invite a number of different researchers with all kinds of different accolades, recognition, and specific rewards around the enterprise of innovation and the utility of their research. So we try to celebrate and recognize them in events that include our university president, provost, vice president of research, et cetera. So high profile, celebrating innovation. And then we just have a number of different mechanisms, like all universities do, where we are available to engage in different courses, certainly in faculty meetings, going into labs, engaging with people in an actual lab and helping to understand what they're working on and how they see the potential of it. So all of these mechanisms are free, and they're certainly not comprehensive, but it gives you a little bit of an illustration, at least how our institution works to try to support this type of a mindset.
Thanks, Mark. And I think what you've outlined here is, we're going to hear this, I think, a number of times during the discussion, which is that the universities really do want to help get technologies out, right, for the public good and other things. So there are a lot of, and I know Mark and everyone on this call is very busy every day. We're not sitting around waiting for people to come, but we find them and they find us. But the point being is that these resources are available and freely accessible and willingly available. And if there's ever any questions, look up your tech transfer office and go set up a meeting or walk over there and say hello. I'm going to transition to Roberto. Roberto, you and Mark work together, but I think what I was hoping you could share is maybe the angle, to the extent that it's different, maybe it's additive, as thinking about it from a life sciences perspective. What does a life science researcher need to think about that's different than maybe an algorithmic type of research or innovation?
Absolutely. I think one of the key challenges for us right now is to make sure that, apart from providing services, that we can make this a customizable type of an effect. In other words, we know that deep tech, there's different spaces, whether it's health sciences or specific technological sciences. So what we're trying, a lot of our efforts are really trying to customize this experience. Me per se, I'm focusing mostly on the health sciences portfolio. So I spent a lot of time with investigators that are specifically in the biomedical space. So I spent a lot of time with FBIR researchers and other similar types of activities. So I think that's a key focus that we have now in a major program, where we're trying to make this effort customizable, and also realize that the space between health sciences and other types of technologies, they share some unique challenges and also some unique strategies that we can help investigators navigate through.
That's great. And I think calling out customization is really super important for the discussion in general too. I think we've covered it in the last couple of sessions too, but every single idea is different. Every single hypothesis is different. Every researcher or faculty member comes at this from a slightly different or a very different angle. And I think as folks who, wake up every day trying to help move these balls down the field, we need to be very adaptable to different scenarios and to think literally, not literally, but think outside the box. Maybe it is a literal thing. I don't know. Roberto can tell me. He's a life scientist. But no, that's really helpful. So let's move now to Josh Green, who's going to tell us a little bit more about ICAP and that program and those services.
Thanks, Sean. So the easiest way to think about ICAP is that we are a program that provides mentors that are here to help guide, specifically in this context, faculty members, grad students, undergraduates, postdocs, staff members, those who are coming from an institution of higher education through the process of ultimately getting their work from the lab to the market. And as we talked about in the last session, there's a number of different ways in order to do that, different paths in which that work can get to the market. And we're here to help make sure that not only the person who we're working with that is connected to the research is getting the education in terms of the process, but they're also able to see what is the right path for them, as well as what steps should be taken, not necessarily to do any one particular pathway, but gets them ready for all of them. So, for instance, pretty much all of the work that's done early on is all done before any type of company is formed. So it's really about setting up whatever the company ends up being that does get created around this, or is used to get the work to the market, has the tools and the information that is going to help them do that. So for one thing, we are partnered with basically every university across the Commonwealth to support their faculty. One of the resources is partaking in a regional I-Corps short course to be able to help open the door for additional federal funding opportunities. Our mentors are here to serve to help enhance the education that's provided through I-Corps by being able to meet regularly with those teams in order to leverage that information in that process. We also are connected statewide. So let's say if you are coming from Virginia Tech, but would benefit from a tool that is in Richmond or in Charlottesville or in Arlington, we can make those connections so that the faculty members throughout Virginia are able to effectively leverage everything that's going on in the state without necessarily having to be an expert in every region. That's what our role is. There are some opportunities like the Virginia Catalyst Grant that requires multiple universities to be involved. So if somebody's coming from an institution, but they don't have contacts at others, we can help bridge that gap. So those are a couple of the things that we do to make sure that people are provided with the right information and get access to the right tools. And similar to what Roberto said, every person who works with ICAP really has their own unique experience. Some of the tools that we leverage, like I-Corps, are used with a lot of folks, but the way that we carry people through is specifically through the path that is right for them based on their venture or their work or their own desire. And then we also want to make sure that no matter when somebody meets ICAP, we're able to ultimately meet them where they are in their journey and help them from there. So as long as somebody has an idea for what they're trying to do, usually that's pretty easy because the work has already been done through research. At any point, people can get connected to our program, get connected to a mentor, and then we will start that process. So that's the general overview of what we're doing. And again, the main purpose is to act as that guide with a mentor and then connect folks to other resources at the right time to be able to leverage them effectively.
Okay, thank you, Josh. And Giselle, I'm going to turn to you next with a special challenge, which is to kind of create a little bit of clarity, maybe only in my mind, but some clarity around this kind of alphabet soup that we use. So there's ICAP, there's I-Corps, there's I-Corps nodes, or there's not, I guess it's I-Corps, whatever it is. There's all kinds of stuff. And if we were to draw Venn diagrams, they would all kind of overlap a little bit. So if you could maybe explain to the audience kind of what I-Corps is and then how it ties into, for example, what Josh discussed with ICAP, how it ties in with these regional I-Corps centers and things of that nature. So big challenge. Thank you, Giselle.
All right. Okay. So first of all, Mark already introduced the I-Corps program at a regional level. If the teams, the I-Corps program is a National Science Foundation funded program, and again, it's to help faculty or research or university-based teams take their research, take it to market. So it's the commercialization of the research so that it's lab to market. Not just lab to market, but I would say in a broader sense, it's I would say societal impact is what we're trying to achieve here by trying to just have all the wonderful research that's done at all the universities, not just languish within the labs, but then actually be used outside the university in the real society. So again, this is experiential. It's an experiential learning program, and it's funded by National Science Foundation. The teams that are allowed to go to the nationals are the teams that have either completed a regional program, because this is a very challenge. The national program is a lot more demanding and is a lot more intense and a lot more time consuming than the regional one. So a few differences. So the regional program, the ones that Mark mentioned, generally speaking, are 2 to 3 weeks long. There are some slightly shorter versions as well. You only need to do 20 customer interviews. And then, and you can just be a solo entrepreneur, or you can be the PI by yourself, or a PhD, or a postdoc, or even a grad student. That's fine. In the national, we require the teams to have completed the regional program, but have a team of 3 people. So there's the PI, there's the entrepreneurial lead, and there's an industry mentor. And so if you don't have a team of 3, you're not allowed to go to the nationals. And why do they require a team of 3? Is because it is much more intense. It is much longer. So it is 7 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks, instead of just being 2 to 3 weeks. The teams are required to do 100 customer interviews. Why? Because generally speaking, after 20, you still don't really know what you're doing. You still don't really know who your customers are. You're still fumbling around a little bit. And by and large, what history has shown is that you only start to get good at doing customer interviews, understanding your customers, understanding what they want, after you've done at least about 50 or so. So this is why they require 100. So basically 100 interviews over 7 weeks, that means a lot of hours of work. And the ratio that we give is depending on which industry you're in. If it's an industry where there are more customers, it's easier to find these people to interview. But otherwise, it sometimes can be very difficult. So you have to have 5 to 10 times as many people in the top of the funnel to be able to interview, to be able to get to the 100. So this is why you need a team of 3. This is why it requires a longer time, and this is a much longer effort and a much more intense effort that is required. So other expectations. So whereas I think in the regional, the technology can be a little bit less deep technology, whereas for the I-Core nationals, the bar is set a little bit higher. Again, because it's funded by the National Science Foundation, so the bar is a little bit higher there than in the regional programs. So one of the ways I said is to have gone through the regional program. This is the way that we recommend, because you've already been taught some of the basics about customer discovery. You're also taught the basics about a business model and business model canvas. So you get there prepared. Teams that have affiliation, if they get a national grant, like an NIH grant, sometimes you can short circuit and go directly into nationals. Based on experience and what we heard from some of the Mason teams, for example, is that they regretted that. Why? Because this learning curve was so steep. And then it was so much harder. They came in and didn't know how to do interviews. They had no idea what a customer segment was. They didn't have no idea what a business model canvas was. Everything was brand new for them. And Mark mentioned the term demystification. And that's really it. Going through the regional will really help you learn the vocabulary. Again, as a faculty or as a researcher, you don't know the business vocabulary. You don't know the entrepreneurial vocabulary. And going through the regional, we actually teach you some of the words, some of the mindset, how to interview people. So these are things. So this is why it's really recommended to go through the nationals first. And then the nationals, of course, because it's such a big effort, you get $50,000 in funding from national. So we teach you things for free, and you get $50,000. And so it's a great deal. But I think what's more important there is that going through the regionals, and particularly the nationals, will really improve your credibility as an entrepreneur, or as a would-be entrepreneur, or as a person who's taking business seriously, because you don't have to be an entrepreneur yourself. There are other options out there. And this is something that I'd like to mention, but it improves your chances of getting funding. And so Robert then will talk about all the funding that you get, but you multiply your chances by 4 of getting SBR and STTR funding if you've done that. Why? Because then you can pitch effectively to VIPC, because you'll know what to say, you'll know who your customers are, you'll know the road to market and all that. And then not only that, so it's just the low-hanging fruit, which are the VIPC and other types of funding, which are again, grants and easier to get. I'm not even talking about going the VC route, but that also improves your chances there. Is this a good time to introduce the various options there, or
why don't we, in the interest of let's let Rob Brooke go ahead and give his intro on his programs. And I'm glad, Giselle, that you mentioned the multiplier effect that these training programs have on SBIR. I'm not sure if Rob has more recent research on that, but it's certainly, I think, well known in the field that it does help your chances. Rob, why don't you go ahead and tell us about resources that available that you and your cohort provide around SBIR training?
Right. So as I mentioned in my introduction originally, was that we have a cooperative agreement with the SBA to facilitate some of the work we do. It's funding, so we're to do outreach and additional focus on presenting opportunity and training companies. So we have a really strong training program because we try to help teach them how to fish, right? So you want to build that foundation of knowledge so that writing a good SBIR, STTR, understanding that process. So my role is to help facilitate the training, whether it be live training classes or webinar versions that we can then have on our webinar archives on our SBIR section on our website. And we're on various agencies at least every 6 months, sometimes even more than that. So we can populate, and if you want to attend a live session, you want to attend the live webinar, or you want to view a recording, so you can learn the process. And what I try to do up front is generally have about an hour discussion with a potential applicant to kind of learn a little bit, get their what they're doing and who their team is, how ready, particularly if it's a university team, or how have you gone through the I-Corps programs and you're ready to apply. Maybe SBIRs and STTRs are private companies, therefore the funding goes to the companies, so you have to be ready to kind of start the company, or at least on paper. Generally, the SBIRs are what you write down there is what you'll have at time of award, not time of application. But it has to be pretty well thought out. So a lot of the discovery, as well as support you can get through an ICAP or an I-Corps program, is not just about the market, but about the team and advisory board development, and how do you cobble that together in a way that's both makes sense but also legal for the program. All federal funding comes with restrictions, so we try to work with companies early on. If it's a university, we try to work with them and help refer them to the local university support, as well as the ICAP support and other support that's around there, so that when they're ready to go, then we can figure out the process for them. SBIR, there's why is it good? $4+ billion a year now in funding through 11 agencies, and there's a lot of discussion. Well, STTR is much smaller. So if you're just going to be doing STTR because any SBIR or STTR can collaborate with university. SBIR is up to 1/3 can go to a university or other outside. STTR up to 60% can go to the university. So there's different reasons that we do through training, and I can discuss that with companies directly, or potential applicants directly, on kind of where those pathways go. But certainly if you're a little more baked and you're ready to have a postdoc spin out and be lead of the company, maybe be the PI at the company, all agencies are on the table. If you're going to be staying at the university, from a university PI perspective, only 4 agencies are there for you. So, DOD, NASA, and Energy, and NIH. But NSF doesn't allow that. So there's a lot of rules, which is why we give particular training for NSF, NIH, DOD, NASA, and other. And I generally attend the national conference we're lucky around Virginia. The national conferences are held twice a year, right here in DC at the National Harbor, part of the Tech Connect conference. So a way to access and learn from the agencies directly. But I work with companies. We try to kind of figure out their pathway and the resources. I've got a little more discussion. So I do the training programs, mentoring, make connections with other resources, as well as professional consultants that If I kind of think you're ready for that, I'll make the introductions and get the support there for you. I'm happy to talk a little more about, if anybody questions about, from a high level SBIR, it's a lot of money there, but it's not for everybody. But the good thing about an SBIR is that even if you don't win it, it's oftentimes the first time you put all that stuff you may have done in ICAP or ICOR on a paper, and you talk about a team that may not exist but is on paper. The market, it's an education. And it might be that you get past that early stage, high risk, high feasibility, is still unproven. That's the purpose of an SBIR phase 1, is prove the feasibility. I don't know if it's going to work. I need money that's the highest risk money out there the government wants to fund to validate, which on the university is usually pretty high. So you're in a good spot there, but we try to work with you and figure out really where the next steps might be.
There we go. Sorry, my mute was not working very well. Thank you, Rob. That was really helpful. So maybe as let's take this opportunity to pull up Giselle's chart that she had put together as a kind of an explainer, and I'm hoping that we can kind of use this as a Giselle. I'm going to let you kick this off, and think about it in terms of kind of the next topic here that we're talking about is funding opportunities. So you can see on this tree concept here that Giselle is going to explain to us that there really is a lot about what we have been talking about, which is advisory, but now funding. So Giselle, why don't you take the microphone and explain what we're looking at here, and maybe kick us off in terms of how to think about different funding sources.
Right. So this is when I give my talk to the professors and the researchers here at the university. I try to make this a little bit simple by visualizing it. Why? Because, and we actually call this the demystification tour. Very often the PIs have a strange concept of what entrepreneurship is. Like, for example, I had one PI who said that, he doesn't want to be an entrepreneur because he doesn't want to have to pitch to VCs. Right. So I said, well, there are many other options out there. And I thought, okay, well, and I keep on hearing it as I go and talk to various people. So I thought, okay, let me make this simple and I'll do a tree, saying, well, you don't have to talk to VCs. There are many roads to take your research to market. And so this is why I say, whatever you do, you have to have strong foundations. This is why I visualize this as a tree. So first, see if there's an opportunity out there, if your research has any legs to be is feasible, to use Robert's term, if there is a market out there. So this is why we say, okay, go through the regional program, and then you'll get an idea. Then maybe it's a go or no go decision. And if it's a go, then just national ICOR is a good way to do it. And this is why I said it'll provide you a strong foundation, and that'll then open up various options. So this is where you can be a faculty lead. There are some faculty leads out there, it's not unheard of. One of the main through NSF ICOR, but also in other countries, very often it's the postdoc or the PhD who can then be the lead and be the entrepreneurial lead, and then take the research that's developed in their lab and decide that maybe academia or research is not for them, that maybe they prefer being an entrepreneur. So that's another option that you can be, is to have the postdoc or the researcher be, or the PhD student be the entrepreneurial lead, and then take the ball and run with it and lead the startup. So we have some here at Mason who've done that. Others have just hired a CEO from outside, or have partnered with a company. So we see that, for example, in the Cybersecurity Accelerator program, 2 last year and then 1 this year. They've just hired an outside person, and then they've done that, and it's just another option. Or another option is also to license. So you can license the innovation, and then to either a startup or a multinational. And one of the professors at Mason, for example, is Lance Lyotta. I think has about 124, 125 licenses out there. And for him, he's very happy to continue doing research in his lab, and just to license all the discoveries that he's made and all the patents that he's come up with. And then throughout this, you get funding. So of course, the National ICOR is a $50,000 one, but again, VIPC through the SBR, the STTRs, the CCF funding. These are the little watering cans I see with little dollar signs. And these are, so I put the lower ones, which are the easier ones to get. And then after that, as you go up, you can have investors, but you'll probably not be ready for investors until you have a few, some experience pitching. And then again, you have a friendly audience, you have friendly people, the friendlies, and Robert Brooke and VIPC are the friendlies who are going to help you along those paths. And they want you to see investors, but they are really the first step that I would go to. And that's my tree of life.
That is a fine tree of life. I like that model very much. Why don't we, Mark and Roberto, maybe turning back to you guys to talk about specifically what's available to Virginia Tech researchers, but more generically, kind of speaking from the University Tech transfer function, the kinds of funding that is available kind of within the walls of the university that relate to early commercialization work.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sean. I like the metaphor of the tree of life. It kind of a tree of promise, right? We're looking at potential, and what we're really talking about here is we're trying to help our research community make impact beyond scholarly impact, which is important, but impact in society and the economy. Doing a startup is one way of doing it. Licensing it to a company is another way of doing it. But we all have to acknowledge research institutions, research universities are not in the business of developing and selling products and services from the technology. We have to partner either with a young organization, a startup, or a mature organization to do that. So the other metaphor that's also commonly used is this thing called the gap. And everybody on this panel is very comfortable with this language, but it's the metaphor of we do have rich funding available through federal agencies and so on that helps our curiosity-based research, the accumulation and the creation of new knowledge. Now, maybe out of that pure research, some new technology or potential technology emerges, but it's a long way off from attracting this other group of money around commercializing something. So in between the research resources and the commercialization resources, of which we're talking of funding right now, there's this referral to a gap. So gap funding often becomes another metaphor that supplements the tree. For example, at Virginia Tech, we have a fund called the Proof of Concept Fund, which is run out of Launch. And it's a grant program, $50K, and it's what we call non-dilutive funding. In other words, it assumes you don't have a startup, and it's not like being an investor in a startup. It's not an exchange for some kind of an interest or ownership of shares in a startup. It's free money, but it's money that allows you to do the activity that your research grants may not allow you to do. And that's what we've been talking about today. How do we get out of our own mind and our own love of our research, which is, it's easy to fall in love with our research. And what we need to do is cross that gap and try to get into the minds of the people that would use this or value it in some way as a product or service. And that gap has to be crossed. Proof of Concept Fund is something that allows us to do that. Now we link, as Gazelle talked about the ICOR program, we link the ICOR program into our proof of concept. So if you get an award, a POC award, which is a competitive grant program, you are also obligating your team to go through the regional ICOR process. Now, this has lots of different value propositions to it itself. You learn to kind of get out of your own mind and into the mind of your potential customer, but it also makes you more eligible for some of these other funding sources like VIPC. VIPC CCF fund has an academic arm to it where they're looking to help fund activities that help you cross the gap coming out of research, but it requires matching funds. So the POC is a potential candidate to be able to apply as matching funds towards the vehicles that VIPC offers. So these are all the mechanisms that kind of gives you funding. I will mention one other one that is now becoming a little bit more ubiquitous across large research universities, and that is fully funded postdocs that contain a commercialization component. We have a program here at Virginia Tech under our presidential postdoc program, and we have a number of different tracks. One of them is called the innovation track, and Launch offers 2 fully funded 2-year postdoc programs where the postdoc and the PI in the lab work together to identify technology coming out of the lab, and a large component of the postdoc's capacity will be applied towards a commercialization effort. So that frees up capacity in the lab to do this kind of thing, and hopefully helps advance the technology. Thank you.
That's great, Mark, thanks. Roberto, did you have anything to add to kind of the university funding picture or supplementing Mark's comments?
Very briefly, though, but completely agreeing with Mark, we also have to keep in mind the importance of going back to Giselle's analogy with the tree of life. Postdocs and early stage investigators, especially early faculty, they play a huge role in this whole process. And I think it's been evident across different funding opportunities, whether it's through, for instance, Virginia Tech with our postdoctoral fellowship program, but also with VIPC. I mean, right now we're partnering with them. We're trying to expand this program. And VIPC also offers an entrepreneur in residency program, which can also be applied for postdocs instead of EIRs, so to speak. So that's also a program that's just recently been launched, and we're working closely with VIPC. So clearly there's an impetus to start promoting the importance of postdocs and early stage investigators.
Thank you, Roberto, and I thanks to both you and Mark for actually promoting the VIPC CCF programs better than I'm doing it today, even though that's my job. Yeah, and it's delightful to be able to collaborate with our university partners. You know, funny enough, we've done a lot of our own customer discovery all along the way to try to, you know, see where these different programs, where we have a hypothesis that they could work, and then we have to go out and validate that there's actually a problem that's needing to be solved. I think in this case we're solving some problems together. All right, so let's move on to let's see, Rob, why don't you or actually let's talk about yeah, let's go to Rob, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about state-sponsored funding programs. Go ahead, Rob.
Want me to talk a little more about the
How about the phase 0 awards that you have?
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So with SBIR, a lot of times we're dealing with, there's a lot of new applicants all the time, and so the training we provide is pretty good. Sometimes, you know, especially if you're a university, the timing of from application to award can be pretty long. At least 6 months typically, sometimes longer, 9 to 10 months if it's NIH, from when you apply to maybe when you get the money. So you have to kind of time that leap into the writing process with the process of waiting. So the training can be good, but then you kind of have to wait till either an opportunity comes that you can actually write for, and then you have to kind of plan. So a lot of times it doesn't happen right after the training, and you maybe wait, and then you start writing it, and you're like, gee, I got to take that class again, or I really need help. I took the training class and I really want to now, but I need some help, some guidance. And so we provide some hand-holding, if you will, through a process I manage to help provide companies what we call a phase 0 award. And that can be simply up to about $3,000 for a company or university research. We pay the company, so it has to be an application has to go in for us to provide the payment, but we can refer you to one of professional SBIR consultants that we work with, or one that you might know of, and we try to, you know, there are different versions out there of some of want to charge a percentage of the award win plus a pretty good upfront fee. I'm not a huge fan of that because often those come with the consultant taking a strong role in writing it a lot, so you're not learning the process, because oftentimes you're going to be having to write multiples of these. when you get the award, you get a 7% fee, generally speaking, in most agencies. So the consultants are sometimes out there looking at that and wanting to get some of that if you win. So they're going to maybe take 5% of that 7. So pretty good, especially if it gets to phase 2. So we try to get companies to get a handhold, so to speak, with consultants that I know, I trust them, and they're going to work with you, provide some guidance, some resources, some templates sometimes, and they're going to charge usually between, say, $3,000 and maybe $5,000, and we're providing a good chunk of that money if you're approved. So there's an application that I would provide to the company after a mentoring call, after you take some of that training classes that I've talked about. Want to get you set up for success. So we want to. So this is something that takes multiple months in advance, hopefully. So reach out the earlier you want to do that. If you want to get that process, the better, so that we can. You're not being reactive with 2 weeks to a deadline, which is very hard to really engage properly with somebody. You want to, particularly with NIH and NSF, where there is, basically no reason to rush an application because they have ongoing opportunities and there's no topics that you're trying to hit on typically. So they're more applicant initiated, investigator initiated topics. So we manage that process. I work with Sean on those, and we've provided over 30 of them in this past year alone. So we're doing pretty good. And but let me know. I'll be happy to help.
Thanks, Rob. That's super helpful. And I suspect that when this webinar gets published, you'll see everybody's emails. But just if you need to reach out to Rob, it's robert.brook@virginiaipc.org for what he's been talking about. Let me just take a minute before we move into our Q&A session and talk about the other VIPC funding programs. So as Rob mentioned, and as has been mentioned on this discussion already, so the Commonwealth Commercialization Fund, or I think we've referred to it as part of our alphabet soup of CCF, Commonwealth Commercialization Fund, provides grants of up to $100,000 for university-based researchers. That's what we consider a phase 1. Everyone has to start at a phase 1. There are opportunities for researchers that have, longer projects that would require more. If they do really well with a phase 1, we have the ability to do a phase 2. But anyone looking at this should be thinking in terms of just a single up to $100,000 grant that would be usable for, Mark mentioned a minute ago, with match, either a cash match or with an in-kind match for while you're still within the walls of the university. So a PI can apply for it together with the Office of Sponsored Programs, or in those events where you've already spun out a company with your university IP licensed to you, you can look at our private sector CCF channel, which is also up to $100,000. But if you're within the university still, don't despair. We have a program that's designed just for you. Once you do spin out, so not only is there the CCF private sector, but VIPC also has an equity funding program called Virginia Venture Partners. And that really starts to look more like early stage venture capital. So we're not doing a lesson on venture capital today. Google it if you don't know anything about it. But basically, when you take a venture investment, you're selling part of your company. You're selling a percentage of your company to investors. You're going to eventually, those investors are going to expect not just to make their money back, but to make 5 times, 10 times their money back. So it becomes a completely different game, but that's the game that some people have to play in order to get the amount of money that they need to really expand their business broadly into the marketplace. Again, subject of a different day's topic. But those are the 2 main things when you think about VIPC, and we really are the Commonwealth of Virginia's funding program for early stage, academic-based spinouts as well as non-academic-based spinouts that are building scalable, technology-driven startups. So with that, let me just open the floor to everyone. We've been talking about funding. Is there any piece of the funding universe that the panelists have been thinking about that we haven't specifically covered, that within the kind of federal, state, and university-based funding streams? Hearing none.
I might add that a couple quick things. Our investment team hosts every 2 weeks, every other Friday of sorts, a virtual coffee hour, they call it, on Fridays, usually about 9 a.m. to about 10:30. The first hour is some sort of formal presentation. They get a panel or they get a key speaker, fireside chat, kind of all things investment, which is great because you can kind of sit in there, just listen some way to, and I say that for a couple reasons. For SBIRs at some agencies, they want you to talk about your future funding needs, because the government, they would say that there's no way they can fund everything for a company. So either you're bringing money in your own, selling stuff, doing consulting and paying for all the product selling, commercialization that the government doesn't pay for, or you got to seek other outside capital. So that's a good event for that. And the last half hour of those sessions is spent in breakout rooms, which our grants team is on the breakout rooms. I'm sometimes in the breakout rooms. Our investment team's in the breakout rooms, and some of the speakers feature that day could be in a breakout. So it's a great way to kind of step in and start learning that sort of process. And as I mentioned, the agencies themselves kind of, for SBIR and STTR, even though it's early, I don't know if it's going to work, but if it does, you have to tell where the market is, but also other monies you might need, and which is really hard for a spin out from universities, sort of thinking about venture capital, but talking about it in a way that is, the more learned you get in it, the better it comes out. And also, there's ways to kind of, sound credible. And the more you learn and hear about it, the better you can have your message conveyed in a proper way. And that goes to, if you're seeking even our investment fund, or, the more you learn the lingo, the less people have to train you to how to be trained, so it's easier to give it to engage with you if the more credible you sound and appear. So just kind of
thanks. Thank you, Rob. Why don't we transition to our Q&A? Josh, between you and Grace, maybe you guys can tee up some questions for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple of good ones, and based on time, I'll hit on the ones that I think just haven't been touched yet. Great question to start is there a place to find out about all of this information, both the funding, the programs, and the resources?
That is a great question indeed. I think the short answer is no, not for everything, but yes for most everything. So let's just go around the table and talk about where our resources are. If you go to, speaking from the perspective of VIPC, we have a very good resource page on our website. So if you go to virginiaipc.org, and along the top banner, you'll see a drop down for resources. Click on that. We've put a lot of the state level stuff at the top. We've put a lot of the regional stuff as you work your way down the page. What is not well represented there is, in my opinion, is university-based resources. So I'll let Mark and Roberto talk about kind of what Virginia Tech offers. And I think the audience should infer that their own universities have similar things. So the first place to stop is the tech transfer office at your university. Ask them these questions, go to their website, find out as much as you can. So Mark and Roberto.
I would concur. Go talk to your tech transfer folks. They can help you navigate some of certainly the internal resources, and potentially point you to new resources that you haven't seen before. I just want to emphasize this foundational thought, and that is, don't think you have to do this as a lone wolf. You don't have to have absolute clarity of all the resources and how to prioritize them and everything else. This is really a team sport, this thing we're calling technology commercialization. So I think one of the most valuable things you can do is try to engage in the innovation ecosystem. There's regional ecosystems across the Commonwealth, all kinds of events going on, seminars going on, workshops. And it's amazing, just by becoming part of that fabric and participating, how you can learn the lexicon and become much more comfortable with all of these different resources that we offer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mark. And your own website, Mark, is vt.edu, and then
Yeah, you can find us by just going into the Virginia Tech homepage and do a search for launch. You can find us, and you'll find Roberto and myself, and we have other individuals on our team, and that can connect you through our tech transfer office and all kinds of things. I do want to just state that because there are rich resources, you do have to probe around a little bit, no matter what institution you're with. But take that as a challenge, and it allows you to kind of discover new things as you go.
Perfect. Thank you. Josh, why don't you tell us about what folks that want to learn more about ICAP?
Yeah, absolutely. It's as simple as going to the Virginia SBDC website, which is virginiasbdc.org, and also on our homepage, there's a list of programs, and we are the first program in alphabetical order. So it's easy to find us, and thankfully we know most everybody in the Commonwealth who are related to this work. So if you simply say our name to people like Mark or Giselle, they can connect you to us as well.
And Giselle, what would how should people find you in specifically the GMU ICOR, but also perhaps the larger node that you're affiliated with?
So we're Mason. We're recently affiliated with the Mid-South Hub, which is a new ICOR hub, and Vanderbilt is our leader. So you can find information about our hub information in the Vanderbilt website, but also at the Mason's ICOR website. And then people can also find information about all the resources that Mason has to offer, which a lot of them are actually Commonwealth-wide resources, by going on the Mason Enterprise website, which is about to go live any week now. So, and that has, of course, Mason Enterprise covers not just the incubators, but has the ICOR program, the ICAP program, the SBDC, and PTAC, which is now called something else. I forgot what it's now called. And then and a few other things like the Cybersecurity Initiative. We also have a couple of programs there, like an accelerator and an entrepreneurship program in the CCI. So Mason Enterprise is the generic website where you have the list of all the support.
And is that Mason Enterprise? Will that be at masonenterprise.org, or is it gmu.edu/something?
I'm not sure, because it's not live yet, so I'm not sure what it is, but I think
so. Let's tell our viewers to go to Google Mason Enterprise GMU, and you will find the website as soon as it's live.
We're being slow.
If I may, just to add complexity to it, the NSF ICOR program, as Al mentioned, is a national program, and there are a number of these different hubs. To make it extra confusing, within the Commonwealth, we participate in 2 hubs. So Virginia Tech participates in the Mid-Atlantic hub, which is led by University of Maryland. Same kind of programming and so on, but depending on which institution you come from, there is a possibility that you might participate in a different hub than others.
Right. And again, whichever university you're affiliated with in the National ICOR, you can go to any of the national programs, and there are about 12 per year. So I did not mention that sooner. So you don't have to go to the ICOR national that is affiliated with your university. Like for us, Vanderbilt, for Mark, for Virginia Tech, it would be University of Maryland. I mean, it's just
right. Sending a team to national gets you credit for sending a team to national, regardless of where that national course is being hosted.
Yes, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about site nodes, hubs. It's just like one big happy family. So.
Super. Josh, I think we have time for maybe one very short question.
Yeah, I think that there's a question that is a little bit self-fulfilling and leads off of what was just mentioned. And it's how to put all of this together. And I'll make an initial comment about ICAP, specifically how it's related to ICOR. I'll say again this idea that a big piece of what we do is providing guidance and be a guide for teams. So we are regularly working with groups from both Virginia Tech and Mason, as well as VCU and ODU and a number of other universities that are all going through this I-Corps process. And one of the things that we do is, regardless of what university you're coming from, we'll make sure that you're getting to the right place, because we want to make sure that, again, with that idea of are all of these resources in one place, it's not really in one place, but we're here to help guide you to each of those places as the right time comes up. So I think if anybody else has anything to share, I'll pass it back to you, Sean, but that I think is a good last question.
Yeah, and I think that all of us on this call, and really I think we've hit on this a few times, at your local institution, there are people that know all this stuff. Make them your friends, go meet them, say hello, buy them a coffee, and we all want to help. So start at home, start close to home, and the world will open up for you. With that, I think we've reached our hour, so why don't we wrap up? Thank you again very much to my collaborator in this, Josh. It's been delightful to work with you on this series. Thank you very much to our panelists, and really appreciate your thoughtful remarks. And hopefully these will be consumed with fervor by a large audience as we publish the result of this. So thank you all very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.